Winter squash, still producing even early autumn. This one's Crown Prince. Watercress grown in pots, it's possible. You've got to keep them very wet though. Very productive cherry tree, marvellous crop this year. Multiplier onions, no idea where they came from. Chinese chives, very tasty flowers. French sorrel, buckler leaf sorrel, succory, more Chinese chives, wild rocket, Mizuna. It's not a perennial, but it's very tasty. Skirret, this is a root crop grown, well, 100 years ago. Very out of fashion, but very perennial. Scorzonera at the bottom of my tomatoes. More skirret. And Japanese bunching onions. Very tasty. They're perennial and they bunch and divide. Potato onions, really big sort of shallots. More watercress. Cuttings from a cabbage. I don't know. I've no idea whether this is going to work or not, but I'm having a lot of fun trying it out. Some chilies, very tasty. Tree onions. This year's crop of bulblets from the top of the plant. Got loads of them. They're all over the shop. Taunton Dean taking cuttings. It's a perennial kale, hardly ever flowers, goes on for years after year. That's Dorbenton kale, again doesn't flower, comes from France, goes on for year after year. Not perennial, but it's a really nice squash. It's a little gem. Still going, it's still giving me loads of little fruit. Not a perennial kale. Well, it's living for more than 2 years. This is dwarf, dwarf green curled. This is the middle of the 3rd year, and eat the sprouts, and then it eventually stops sprouting. This is 9-star perennial broccoli. It's actually really a cauliflower, and it's a cutting from last year's one. So I'm propagating it from the low down on the stalk. You can pull off sort of offsets. This is Kailan. It looks a bit scruffy now, but cutting after cutting works with this. Very, very tasty. Yuppie trap. This is cucamelon. I've had about 3 tiny little fruits. Very tasty. This is a biennial broccoli, but I've taken it from last year's. I've taken cuttings. This shouldn't work, but it's an experiment, and I think it will work. So I'm hoping if I get loads of broccoli off this next year, then that'll be an experiment worth doing. And that's my backyard.